Alrighty. We made it. We're here. Let me turn all this on. So, for today's stream, if you missed it, actually, let me pull up my websites here. Stream workshop. So, here we are in the Michael Pavlovich workshop. And if we go to Pixelated ZBrush, somewhere on here, maybe under videos, we did a group, we did a group session. Multi-stream episode 2, there we go. So I'll link you here. During this stream, I made the Boogieman from Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie Boogie specifically. And I also made, I guess I can load this up too, made a pair of dice. Here, wait for it. There we go. We also made this, and I guess I can load this up too. We threw these all into Painter and got rendering. Let me move this over because my eyes are getting old and these are small. Can I make this bigger? Control plus. No. Good morning, Brazil. My sound on? Yes. Okay, good. Move this on down and move this on over. Recent dice. It's going good. How you guys doing? From Greece, Brazil, all over. I love it. So here's my dice here, and we're gonna go into IRA real quick. And there we go. So, you know, throw a little texture on there, and I did a little animation this morning. You know what? Let's look at that too. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. We'll drop it in here and see how it did. Maybe I need to kick off a render. I did a little bit of a physics render last night before I went to bed here. Let's see. Update later. File, import media from, oh, sorry. Images. Load as sequence. There we go. Again, we'll see how this turned out here. Scooch this up. Sorry, I usually work on a bigger screen here. There we go. Just give me a little, there we go. Dice roll here. How'd this turn out? Dice coming in. Hey, that turned out okay. We might throw a little bit of color correction on there, but it looks like dice rolling in. I can live with that. So we got dice, we got Oogie Boogie, I think is his actual name, and we can get cracking if you guys are ready. I think I'm ready. We have a cold front blowing in, so hopefully my voice isn't too terrible. Just ZBrush and Keyshot, what are the difference between Substance Painter and Keyshot? Well, Substance Painter, you can do, I mean, you can, in Keyshot, you can, let me just jump out of here real quick. So for instance, in Substance Painter, we have this object here, and if I go through and I just start getting rid of some of these areas here, in Keyshot, you can certainly go through and you can, oops, it looks like I got a void still in there. We go. So this is just like a base object here. So in Keyshot, you'd like drag and drop a material, which you can kind of do in here. It would basically be like you want this to be gold. You can just drop gold on here. Or if you want it to be, let's do what we're going to do later, like a burlap. You can just drop burlap on here. And now you've got, you know, a little burlap texture. And in fact, let's go in here to the shadows. Oop, not down here. Shadows here. I'll go ahead and turn some shadows on. So, for example, you can do this, or you can do mixes of both. I don't have any color IDs on here because it was all just one ID, but you can, you know, paint different areas to have burlap or color, or what I ended up doing in here, which is just kind of building up a base. So here's the painted base here, and then I did a little bit of a roughness breakup. The dark areas in here are just run by a dirt generator. So you can go through here. So in Keyshot, you would go through and you can do like an AO utility, and you can tile grunge through it. You just get a little bit more little bit more control in Painter to kind of go through and texture. And you can also do this in Polypaint too. You can go through in ZBrush and just paint on there and then bake that out as vertex information. There's the color breakup, a little bit of edge wear in here. And again, this edge wear is mostly just run by a generator. So here's so as I drag this up, we get a little more edge wear in here. Blah, 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 light scratches. And then in fact, if I wanted to, you know, do like a green and then add a black mask, and then on this mask we can just add a quick paint. There's all sorts of crazy stuff you can do in here. Let's see, I don't remember where exactly these are. It would be it's been a while obviously since I've used them. Where's my physics brushes at? There's a keyword, and you can also do stitches, you can do stamping. This would be under what? So you can just kind of paint some stuff on here. I was looking for, oh, there we go. So rain is a particle, not physics. There we go. So for instance, I could just make it rain in my scene, and then wherever these droplets rain, it'll kind of just streak through. And in fact, on this layer, we can go through here. And then if you didn't want to do this in ZBrush, you know, like, you know, go through here and etch all this stuff, you can just do it in your texture. So you can drop this height down and kind of dig that in. If you want to change the color, you can go through here and be like, you know what, I don't want red, I don't want green, I want blue or red or purple or whatever. You can do laser impacts, all sorts of stuff. So anyway, it's very flexible. And in fact, that's another thing I would bring up too, is if you're not going to 3D print this out and you wanted to do wood, you could do a wood grain. So here's, you know, just throwing a little wood texture on here. I'll put this below the void here. There we go. So there we get instant wood. And then of course you can swap these out. You can change the grain on the fly. You can go through here and you can say, you know, grab this layer and you can scale it more or less, and you could increase or decrease the amount of height information being passed through. So now you got a nice walnut carved piece of wood here. Of course, you can export these out, and then what I ended up doing for the dice roll was throwing that into Maya, running a little physics simulation, rendering that in V-Ray, and all that stuff. So anyway, this is a ZBrush workshop, so let me hop into ZBrush, then we'll get cracking. Is that dice UV unwrapped to be able to take textured keyshot? Yes, it is UV unwrapped. And you know what? I guess we can kind of look at that too if you'd like. Good morning, John. 2 hours of sleep. Yikes! Ouch! I don't know if I could do that anymore. My whole body might just shut down if I try to do that. Good morning. Good morning. Is a simple way of tweaking a material graph in Keyshot. You can go into the, and we might do that today too. Just hop into Keyshot or in Substance Painter and go a little bit deeper. Can you transfer textures made in Painter into a 3D print file? You could possibly, if you have UVs, export the height information as a displacement map, bring it back into ZBrush as a displacement, and then you could apply that displacement to your 3D model. I don't know that it would work super great. I've never done it, or I haven't done it in a while. If I have, there we go. So we have our camera set up here, and I have our dice. So if I go through here and I hit play, the dice will come in, doop, 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 and doop, 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 kind of settle in. There was a couple of tricks that I had to, not tricks, but basically I have a little bit of wind in here that'll kind of push the dice along into the camera, and then also on each of the dice here, if I let these settle in here and I have them selected, I had to throw a little bit of a, so the wind I had to kind of turn off. I forgot spacebar doesn't stop this, and stop. So this wind here, you're gonna see I have 2 keyframes. I had to turn the wind off because I thought it was jiggling the dice, and it turned out I just need to up the dampener. So once it hits a certain point, I crank up the, I guess it'd be under the channel box here. I just go in and crank up the damping to 100 so that it would stop. It just kept wanting to wiggle around, I think, because and you can see this is just decimated. I didn't go through and do a super nice game res. It's literally just lowest, easiest way to go. And then of course, if I could just turn my viewport here. So here's my, you know, I render this out of V-Ray, but you can turn on the V-Ray viewport here. So as I'm going through and as we're running the simulation, we can just have V-Ray kind of doing its thing. I can also turn on noise reduction here. See if that does anything worthwhile. There we go. Boop, boop, boop. Reduce some noise a little bit faster. It's probably the same thing during playback. It just reduces noise. The cool thing about this is, so if I back out of, whoop, not all the way out. Let's back out of here. We can turn on, where's my guy? There he is. So here he is, and there's his dice. And you see we got a little bit of fuzz on him. We got a little bit of lighting. I can just move this light around, I suppose. There we go. Scale this out maybe. There we go. So got a little bit of burlap sack. This is from 32-Bit Studios, these lighting scenes. He does really, really cool kind of initial setup. Here's a little blue overhead here. We can do, let's see, side dramatic. And this one here is just the light, just that one light that we created here. So we go through and kind of drop this down here. Oops. I rotated the background. Just the V-Ray light, please. There we go. There we go. And again, this is just kind of built in the viewport. I can open up the frame buffer too and go through here and set this to render, but it's nice to have it in the viewport too. But yeah, that's that. Let me go ahead and save file. No, don't save. I guess we'll leave this open in case we want to hop back in there. Yeah, that was Substance Painter. Adobe Base Change Substance UI is comfortable with the algorithm mix. I think I couldn't really, you know, I guess I've been using it long enough to where I don't really remember what the changes were. Something over here was a little bit different, but oh, sorry, I should probably be talking into my mic, huh? Finally had something good to watch at work. Well, thank you. Hopefully it's good. I'll try and, I don't know, get started in ZBrush here. Yes, Substance Painter is very, very easy to use. Cool. Update for ZBrush. Yes, so we're in 2022.2 right now. As you may, 2022.0.2, sorry. I might have mislabeled my workshop this morning. Oops. But yeah, I think there was a few fixes in that update there. Yeah, exactly. I'm in ZBrush now. Do photos work with the Bas Relief function? That might be a little trickier. You can, so one thing, okay, so let's talk about that real quick. That'll be cool. So here's my entire scene, right? So what I can do is, this was also another question that was brought up on the MRGBZGrabber. So if I go through here and I grab MRGBZGrabber and I say, let's say always switch, and I just go through here and I just click and drag, go over this whole thing, and that'll give me a depth grab here. Now, this isn't going to be a Bas Relief. You're going to see it's just literally a Z depth grab. So if I take this alpha and I go into, what's an easy one? I guess a circle 3D. What's this one all about? No. Well, you can do is turn on X symmetry. Nah, let's stick with the cylinder. So cylinder, make polymesh 3D. Let's go ahead and scale this down. Geometry. I should have done an initialize, but since I didn't, we can go in here to edge loop, delete loops. And then I'm going to go in here to say crease with the crease tolerance at 45. Hit Control D a bunch of times. And you know what? Let's do this. I don't like this cap here, so I'm going to hit X to go make sure this is symmetrical across the X axis. I'm going to say delete lower. I'm going to go in here to ZRemesh or half, adapt size down to 0, detect edges. I'm going to ZRemesh this just to get a little bit of nicer geometry to stamp on. So here we have our coin. Is there anything fancy I want to do with this coin? Not particularly. I suppose what I could do is I could Control-Shift-Tap this and then Control-Shift-S to shrink, Control-W to make that its own polygroup. Maybe we need to go in here and do a slight inset polygroup ball legacy. Just put in a little bit of an inset here and then Q-Mesh polygroup ball, hold down Shift, push this back. If you're wondering, what was all of that? I do have an intro to ZBrush here that'll get you up and running. If you're new to ZBrush, you have no idea what program this is or what I'm doing. There's that, and then on my ArtStation 2, there's a little bit, you know, all the new versions of ZBrush and the intro to ZBrush, and even ArtStation has its own ZBrush course if you have ArtStation Learning, which I guess is over here in the comments. There it is. So there's 12 hours worth of ZBrush intro, ZBrush stuff you can do as well. So I'll link you there, here, 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 and here. So anyway, we have this, and now we have kind of a coin here. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to say crease PG to crease my polygroups here, and then I'm going to hit Control D, you know, until we get a fair amount of resolution, say 640,000, so subdivision level of 5. And now I've got a coin back here. But if I go back in here, we go Alt S, and we say we got a standard brush. Let's go ahead and clone this brush off, drag rect, and then grab that depth grab. You're going to see, if I turn off X symmetry, as we drag this out, and in fact, if I just want to go where this is and not, you know, go over the entire object here, or even on the back, I'm going to hit W and Control Tap, and that'll mask everything except for that polygroup, that initial polygroup there. So now when I drag this out, I'll leave everything alone. Let's also take that focal shift down to -100. So we have our Z depth grab. You're going to see, or the MRGBZGrabber, and again, that's just Z depth. So not a whole lot of detail in here. A little bit, surprisingly. It did better than I thought it would, but it's not real Bas Relief. Luckily, there is a Bas Relief you can, Bas Relief, sorry, Bas Relief you can run under Alpha. You can go in here and you can say, did you make Bas Relief? I've already forgot what it is. Apply Bas Relief. Let's say apply. So with this Z depth grab, we were able to turn that into, so here's our original Z depth, and then see the difference. You get details all through the entire object. So now when we go through here, we're getting all the details of that entire scene. And of course, there's options in here you can change. But to save you a few steps, if we go back to our scene here, and let's just say, you know what, I just want him. I'm going to go in here to Subtool. I'm going to turn everything off except for him and his stitches. I'm going to pose, you know, let's go from the back this time. There we go. And if I want to capture him, I can just say, make it from my alpha. So there we go. And it's also based on my document size. So you'd want to maybe go in here to document, turn off proportional, let's say 1024 by 1024, resize. And then you can't really see my document. So I'm going to document back. I'm just going to choose a slightly different color gray, and then go in here to document, zoom out a little bit. So now I can a little bit more control over where this exactly is here. There we go. So we've got the arm in front of him. There we go. Let's say that's the look I'm going for. So I'm going to go in here and say make Bas Relief, and that'll go ahead and give me that alpha, and then I can hop back over here into my coin, and then I can just standard brush, nope, go to our standard clone. There we go. And this, so now we have our little guy. Of course, I don't even need to do that. If you need a little bit, we can go in here to our guy. We can go in here to insert that coin into our actual scene here. I'm going to rotate this around, and then I can literally just whatever files I have here, I can just position. This is useful too if you're not quite sure exactly what subtools or what you want to capture. You can literally just have your subtools and your object behind it. Let's actually keep that here. There we go. And then if I want to capture this again, we can Control Tab to just mask this one polygroup here. And then with this in front, we can go down here to, I think it's under Subtool. You know what? And I haven't really done this since, oh, there it is, project. Subtool, project, Bas Relief. And then again, all these settings in here, then you can project. And then whatever you have in your scene here will be projected back here to this object. Now, I also do have ZBrush 2022, What's New? So everything I've been talking about and more is in this playlist here. Yoink. And then this playlist here, all the way up at the top. There you go. ZBrush 2022, What's New? If you go up here to the upper right-hand corner, all of these 17 videos will take you over the new 2022 stuff here. why not use Marmoset? Well, I did. I do that too. So here, if you want to see more Marmoset stuff, here's a huge Marmoset scene and a whole bunch of introductory stuff on Marmoset. So this here was all Marmoset. Well, this is actually textured in Substance Painter and then thrown into Marmoset, but you can also texture in Substance or Marmoset if you'd like. If you want more information on that, oh, where is it at? This one, this no UV look dev tutorial here goes through a bunch of different things, ways to have your object applied to a plane so you can still get shadows and still do texture information, but you don't have to worry about like decimating and UVing or any production-y stuff like that. It's literally just a plane that you can do look dev on. That can get surprisingly complicated, and it also goes into texturing and Substance and Marmoset in here, so you can see we're texturing in Marmoset there. Yeah, so you can take like an entire object, like a robot jumping over a little field there. And again, this is all just applied directly to a plane, and then just kind of cleaned up in Photoshop and painter filters and, you know, a guy with his face split open and all sorts of weirdo stuff that I would work on. So anyway, there's that too. That looks fun for you. And if I missed something, I apologize. They're coming in fast and furious. Yeah, V-Ray is pretty good render. Show the key that you press. You can use a keystroke overlay. Might be useful. I had a keystroke overlay, but I'm using the middle of my screen, and it kept wanting to put it in the corners of my screen where it's not being captured. And I tried to move it over so that people could see it, and it wouldn't stay there. So yeah, there's a good keystroke overlay. I also use a ton of hotkeys if you're new to ZBrush or you're not new to ZBrush, but I would really highly suggest, and again in this intro to ZBrush, down here there's like hotkeys and custom menus, the ability to set up hotkeys, and then a custom menu in here too. You can see I'm constantly jumping in here to just get stuff done. Cool. Yeah. Happy ZBrushing. SAPM. Okay, I'll give that a shot. Can you show how you made the stitch to go along the path for the character? Absolutely. Let's do that. Let's get started. Make sure I don't have any. Can you open XMD with ZBrush if you have it? I think I do. I think it's under File, isn't it? Open XMD Toolbox. I don't have it installed. Associate comment may say, okay to go. Download your free version or press cancel to abort. Yeah, so File, XMD Toolbox, and then you can just load it from there. There is search bad in ZBrush, which you can search words to find tools or stuff inside the program. Yes, so in ZBrush, if you hover over basically anything like duplicate subtool, and then you can see the hotkey for that is Control-Shift-D. If you hold down Control, that'll give you even more information. This one doesn't have a tremendous amount of information, but you know, for Bevel Pro, you can hold down Control, or what's another one? Align here. Here's Align left edges. Hold down Control, and then it'll give you more information. So it's kind of like a built-in help menu that'll show you the hotkey if one exists, and also hold down Control, and it'll give you more information. You can just Google, or there's also some help documentation. Let me see what's new. Search online docs. Oop, there you go. So you can search that documentation. If you're on my YouTube and you're like, what is this Fibermesh all about? Just type that in, and then anytime I've ever talked about Fibermesh, it'll be in there, for instance. A lot of ways to go about it. Are you going to update the ZBrush for ideation at some point? Yes. Probably over Christmas break. I'll have a few days off. Have you tried Redshift? Yes. I generally try everything. Now, whether I use it a bunch or get really good at it is another thing. You have enough life. Believe me, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm going to go in here to document, turn on W size, hit new, and just kind of redo my document here. And I'm going to go ahead and we'll get started here, because I think we'll have a little bit of fun. Oh, thank you. Oh, Ninja Turtle scene was fun. Mari for texturing. It's been a while. It's probably been about 5 or 6 years since I've used Mari. It's not a bad program. It just hasn't really, haven't had to go in there yet. Cool. So we're going to make let me see if I can get a good reference shot here. So usually what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll just, you know, try and find all the reference I can. And I have the, you know, here's the entire scene and the little thing and the little bar and the little ratchet thing. And here's him, Oogie Boogie. And then also what we might do is make some bugs. You know, he's actually, spoiler alert, a burlap sack filled with bugs. And so, you know, here's some good dice reference, super, super nice. You know, even the little roughness scratches in there. So pretty decent reference I have up here. So basically what he is a flower, like I said, a burlap sack that has kind of these little wavy arms and little stumpy legs and a kind of a chunk body and a little head and a little face. So we can go ahead and make that real quick. And it should go pretty quick. So what I'm basically doing is you'll usually when you start up ZBrush, you'll have your little brush palette over here and you've got some primitives. If you choose the Polymesh 3D primitive, in any other primitive you choose, it's like the Ring 3D. Oh, let's do a fun one. Helix 3D here. You can drag it onto your canvas. And of course, if you just keep dragging, obviously you're just gonna do this. So Control N to clear your canvas if you ever do that. Drag it out, go into edit mode, or remember, hover over this and you can hit T to go into edit mode, or hold down Control if you want more information on what edit mode exactly is. So now we're in edit mode and we have this object, so we can go and start editing this object. Now we can't start sculpting. If you try to, it's gonna say, hey, you gotta go up here and hit Make Polymesh 3D, because right now it's a primitive. So we can go down here to initialize, and you can go in here to these, you can grab these, you can kind of, you know, if you wanted to just be flat, you can just drag off and now it's flat, and then you can go through here, either profile, and you can go, I guess that's not really super helpful, but like here's coverage, so you can wind and unwind this. This is actually super useful to start creating a bunch of different shapes. In fact, even, you know, we were just talking about it on that Ninja Turtle scene. If we look, you know what? It's probably another skateboard scene here. Actually, I don't even think I went into that on the skateboard scene. Basically, there's a bungee cord. We got a good shot of it. There we go. Perfect. You know how you have these bungee cords and it has that little metal spring with a little loop attached on here? That was basically made, yeah, this one right here. That was just half a helix, and then I took the edge of that geometry and just looped it around. So you'd be surprised, I suppose, how useful this helix is. But once you're ready to start sculpting on it, once you've got this all set up, then you go in here to Make Polymesh 3D, and now you can start sculpting on this or editing this object. However, like I said before, if you go in here and choose Polymesh 3D, you'll get a little star object, and it's already a Polymesh 3D. You don't need to hit this button because there's no initial, well, there are initialize options, but these are different. Oh boy, we're already getting deep into it. But basically these initialize options are like Q-Cube, Q-Grid, and Cylinder, and just a couple different options outside of the original shapes that you can play with. So anyway, we have a Polymesh 3D. We want to make Oogie Boogie. W, hold down Shift, and I'm going to rotate this -30 degrees so we have a triangle at the top. And again, what we're trying to make is essentially, you know, Patrick from SpongeBob. He's got a pointy head, pointy arms, pointy feet. There we go. Boop, boop, boop. In a face. So if we want to do this, we have our object here. I'm going to turn on, tap X to go into X symmetry. That's under your transform menu. You can see X toggles symmetry on and off, and X is the default symmetrical plane. If we turn on our floor here, you're going to see, let's scoot our camera around. So blue forward is Z forward, and Control Shift. So hold down Control Shift. We're going to select rectangle, Control Shift, and then hold down Alt. If you want to hold down spacebar, you can move it around, but you can hold down Alt. That'll get rid of these. They're not deleted, they're still there. You can hold down Control Shift and tap to bring it back, or Control Shift drag to invert your visibility selection. That's essentially where all this stuff hides, is right in here. But Control Shift Alt, geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. If I ever go in my custom menu and say it, geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. So we have the beginnings of our star. Of course, we need to move this around. So let's make these into legs. Let's make these into arms. And then there's our pointy head here. And we'll go ahead and, you know, we'll drop this down a little bit. So this is all we're looking for to start with, is just some very simple geometry to kind of get him started. And then, so I have some holes down here. I could go in here to ZModeler, BZM, and I could like, you know, go in here, and I could even weld these together if you wanted to. You see how these are getting kind of close. You can go in here to geometry, modify topology, weld points. Just crank that weld distance up. It'll weld those points together for you. you don't even need to do that, honestly. You can just geometry modify topology, close holes operation to close whatever that is, because what we're going to end up doing is going in here and just dynameshing right off the bat. I don't see any reason to poly model Oogie Boogie when he's just a flour sack. So geometry dynamesh. I always turn down blur since it's right there. I don't think it makes that much of a difference anymore. Resolution 128 should be fine. Hit dynamesh, and there we go. Oh, here's the thing. So if I hold down Shift and I go in here to activate Sculptress Pro mode, this is a cool mode. So we can go through here to like BSH to our snake hook brush. You're going to see with this mode turned on, you will get automatic interpolation. You will get tessellation, automatic tessellation here. So you're going to see as I'm moving this brush head or as I'm sculpting, it's automatically updating the geometry on the fly. And you know, a lot of brushes you're allowed to use this mode on, so you're going to see it's just automatically tessellating as we go. As opposed to if we had this off and we did BSH and we just kind of move this around, you're going to see it even tells you, hey, it works a little bit better with Sculptress Pro. You know, it kind of shears that geometry. The whole reason I brought this up though is I can hold down Shift, turn on Sculptress Pro, and you're going to see as I make my brush size smaller, we get a smaller tessellation. If I tap S or go up here to draw size and then make my brush size bigger, you're going to see we get a bigger tessellation. However, now we have 3 different sizes here. So if you go into Dynamesh, take this resolution slider and just drag it off and hover over your mesh, you're going to see this is a 1000 resolution Dynamesh. So if you just let go and control drag, it'll Dynamesh my entire object at that resolution that I was hovered over. If I go here, and again, you can do the picker or the resolution slider. So we take the picker this time and go here and control drag, it'll Dynamesh at that resolution. And of course here. So that's a new 2022 edition. That's kind of neat. But anyway, let's go ahead and undo back. And here we go. I'll go ahead and turn off Sculptress Pro. So here we go. I'm going to go in here to my inflate brush. So BI brush to open up the brush palette, I to go to your eye brushes, and then N to open inflate, or you can just assign a hotkey to it. Anytime you want to assign a hotkey, you can go through here, just hover over anything in your interface, hold down Control Alt and tap, and then do like Alt 7 or whatever, and then I'll set a hotkey for you. Then you want to go in here to Preferences, Config, Hotkeys, Store your hotkeys. So anyway, go through here and smooth, go through here and inflate, and essentially we have, and then it's Control Drag to re-Dynamesh. We have the beginnings of our little Oogie Boogie guy. So we got a little butt on there, and then fatten up his little feet, and then fatten up his little arms, and then BSH. I like to use the not Sculptress, but snake hook to kind of get just, it's a kind of an interesting way to kind of go through here and use it as kind of a move brush here, but also have, it's not just super movie. So we got the butt here. He's kind of, seems like he's a little bit, his gut doesn't kind of hang down like this. It kind of seems like it kind of puffs up. He's got kind of a chest on here. And then we can go through here, of course, you know, turn off this. We can go through here and inflate. And again, this is Dynamesh, so we're just kind of going through here, and as we start sculpting, now you can go through here as we're, you know, sculpting. You can turn on Sculptress Pro and it'll update, tessellate on the fly. But even while we're going through here and we're making some big changes to kind of be like, okay, skip that note, please. Kind of flop this back, and you can see, okay, it's starting to do some weird stuff to geometry. Or you can hit W and Control Drag up your object to kind of mask as it goes up, and then we can go through here and kind of rotate this back here, and then again we'll just kind of keep control dragging here, and then kind of rotate this back here, and then hold down Shift to smooth. So we kind of got that shape. And then again, if you make any drastic changes to your geometry, Control Drag, it'll re-Dynamesh, redistribute. Actually, it's kind of projecting from all 6 sides to get you new geometry. But there you go. So now we've got the basic face, well, basic shape going on here. Something like this. And again, let's go into our clay brush. Oops. Clay brush here. Clay buildup is another good one. You can see clay buildup. I have it kind of set to custom settings. So I drop the Z intensity down, and then underneath the stroke, I believe I have like roll distance up to 5. I think I got that from Magdalena. Or something I was watching, just to kind of use this as a build up here to kind of get my forms here. So let's give him a little bit more of a back. Now, if he's very thin, which he's not, but let's say we had a very thin mesh, and of course you're dynameshing, and you're going through here and you're using clay buildup, and you're like, everything's great, and then you drag through, and then let's do this a little bit more obvious. So you're doing this, and then you control drag, and you start getting this. That means you need to have, on the coin, when we did this earlier, we control tapped a polygroup, and that masked just that area, so we didn't have to worry about back faces. Now we do have to worry about back faces. So if your brush size is bigger than the thickness of your object, and you don't have brush auto masking, back face masking turned on, it's going to see it. However, if you have this turned on, whatever the camera doesn't see, your brush doesn't see. So now you can go through here safely and brush this out, and it'll leave those back face masks alone. Of course, you can also use this with your move brush. Go through here, and now as I switch, you're going to see here's my clay buildup, and then if I go to move, it turns off. So you're going to see here I have a little indicator in my custom UI that tells me, hey, back face masking is off. So if I'm up here and I don't have my brush options, I can still look here and see if it is on or off. Then I have a hotkey assigned to that. So Alt F is my hotkey for that. So now I can go through here and use back face masking with my move brush, and it'll leave this alone. So that's kind of useful for doing like thin stuff. So we've got a huge, we got like a mega. Let's have a little bit of fun with this one. So we're gonna do a bodybuilder version of Oogie Boogie. Now I'm gonna turn back face masking off, or Alt F here. So we're gonna say, you know what? Let's pull these legs in a little bit, and here, and let's go ahead and give him a little pose. So I'm going to hold down Control, Mask Pen. Actually, he might be a good candidate for Z-sphere posing. If you want to look that up, just Google Z-sphere posing. And I got a couple on my channel that go over that. But I think we can just hold down W and then Control Drag. And then one thing we could do, let's do his face first, and then we'll start posing him a little bit, and then we'll ZRemesh. So his face, what does it look like? It's kind of got 2 eyes, a little brow, and then a floppy mouth in there. So we'll go ahead and get that going. Sorry, I just got to move this into place so I can have some decent reference. So here's his face, and then there's his flopped back hat here. So I'm going to give this a little bit more pizzazz here. And then for his eyes and his brow, I'm just going to go in here with my standard brush. By default, the standard brush has a little bit of lazy radius to kind of smooth your stroke out. You can tap L or go in here to stroke lazy mouse, and you can see L toggles lazy mouse on and off. So if you want that on, just crank that lazy radius up, and you'll get a very nice even strokes, that little rubber band behind it. Or again, you can tap L to turn that off. And we can go through here, and he's, okay, give me his eyeballs, give me his mouth here. We're just gonna kind of dig this in. Of course, you can mask and just move if you want to. But I think we'll be okay. I also use the Damien standard brush, standard, to go through here, and we'll give him a little bit of a neck, and then we'll hold down Control. Let's go in here to mask lasso. We'll just grab his head, and he doesn't have a tremendous neck, but he has some. So we're gonna kind of give ourselves a little bit of breathing room here. There we go. So again, we're just kind of blocking this out in our happy trees phase of modeling here. And then for his mouth shape, let's go ahead, and he does kind of have like a duck lip kind of thing going on, and then you can make him kind of, he's a happy, I mean, he's not a real happy character per se. I guess he kind of is in a really sadistic way. Again, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Nightmare Before Christmas. I think it's like a 25-year-old movie, so get on that if you haven't. So go through here, and there we go. So we got a little guy going. And if your resolution's starting to break down, like, it's not terrible. This is actually a fine resolution to kind of start blocking in your shapes. But if you just need a little bit more, go in here to Dynamesh, crank that resolution up just a tad. And then when we subdivide here, we'll go up to like 192. You're gonna see we're getting smaller squares. So there we go. So we'll kind of take this out. We'll go through here and inflate here. And he's got that lower lip here. So again, standard brush, clay brush, whatever you want to use to kind of go through here and just start diving in. Now we do have cloth. So if you wanted to, BC brush cloth twister, you can go through here and you can actually start using cloth simulation on him, which we'll get into in a second. But for now, what I'm doing is just getting my major forms on there before I start going in and simulating cloth. So here he's got like a baggy head. We'll go through here and just kind of bag this up, and so that'll work. And then for the pose, we're gonna do a most muscular pose. That'll be a little bit. Let's do. I'm just gonna do this. Ah, perfect. There's my boy. First image. Thank you, Arnold. I was basically raised by Arnold in the 90s. And by that I mean I watched a lot of Terminator 2 and Conan the Barbarian. So that's the pose I'm looking for. Of course, my proportions are going to be a little bit different, but we can kind of start there. And I'm not going to be that. He's still a burlap sack, so I'm not going to be hyper anatomically correct. We're just going to have a little bit of fun with him. So again, we got this here, and again we got the eyeballs here. Kind of push those in and kind of build this up. You can see pretty quickly you can get the the volumes you're looking for. And what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go in here just yet and start inflating this up, and then if I control drag, you can see it's going to stick those together. So anything I want to be separate and I want to have like overlapping, I'm going to leave a little bit far apart, and I'll show you why in just a second. Because as I start posing this, I want to have these little sections available to kind of flop over and overlap with each other. Same thing with the head. I can go through here and I kind of like push this in and pull this around, but I don't want to have this laying on his back here. Not yet. I can do it later, but not yet, because I don't want it to stick together essentially. You can't. Sculptris Pro doesn't stick things together. Dynamesh does. But we're in Dynamesh land now. So again, we're just doing in our primary forms here, Dam Standard to go through here. And there's another brush, the Dam Standard BD, Dam Standard 02 you can download from the internet. That'll come in handy later. But just while we're just starting out, I think Dam Standard will be fine. And he's got a little bit more of a, depending on the shot, he's got a little bit more of a caboose on him. So there we go. So he's going to be doing his Arnold pose here with his little stumpy legs. So we'll dial in. He's got a little indications of a little flower sack foot. We can kind of dial in there. They don't look super huge to me. And then again, we'll just give little indications of form turns, form changes on here. And his belly isn't super huge. Even on the reference that I have here. So here we go, and now he's going to pull a little pose here. So before I start ZRemeshing or doing any of that, or basically getting new geometry, we'll go in here to BSH, and we'll say, so he's got this, and then these are going to turn in. So I can just Control Shift drag over these, Control Tap to blur this out. If you have a very high density mesh and you still want a blurry transition, just back your camera out with lasso and then grab it, and you'll see you'll get a very soft transition. Control Tap to invert, and then again, if you're new to ZBrush and you're like, what are you doing? How do you do all this stuff? Go to my intro series. This is this channel for having fun right now, and having fun doesn't mean doing an intro series. So, because intro series honestly they're really boring. I hate to say that, but after doing like 10 years of intro series and hundreds of hours of how to use the basics of ZBrush, it gets a little tiring. So go check those videos out that I posted earlier. And if you need an update or refresh for anybody new joining us here, intro to ZBrush, here's another intro to ZBrush right here. And I've got some more. I think I have 5 intro to ZBrush series out there on the internet, and then on my YouTube channel as well. You can check those out. So we've got our guy blocked out pretty easily. Again, we haven't stuck his head on there just yet. And his head's actually looking a little bit big. So let's scale all that down. We can go through here, mask this out. There is actually, if we hit W and hold down Alt, so Alt tapping on your object will reset, it sets it to the surface normal. Very useful for hard surface modeling. You hold down Shift. There is a new, if you go up here, you see the focal shift by default on the gizmo is set to -100. That just means, you know, it moves, scales, and rotates, you know, uniformly or non-uniformly, but it behaves how you would expect it. However, if we crank this up, you're going to see now we can just have a fall off on here. So we can move, scale, and rotate based on the gizmo fall off and the gizmo positioning. So that's kind of neat. So again, I'm just hitting W to go into gizmo mode and doing that. If you want to, you can also go through here and hold down Control and mask out any areas. Control Alt to unmask. Control Tap to blur. Oops. Control Tap to blur your mask, and all of this can be found underneath masking here. Blah blah blah. Control Tap to invert your mask, and then you can go through here. Hold down Alt to move your pivot, and then we can just scale this down. Yeah, that looks about right. That's actually kind of. There we go. Yeah, beautiful. Cool. There's actually a cloth transpose you can use that we'll get to in a second. Moving right along. Yeah, these will kind of come down this way. Oops. Damien standard here. Some wrinkles under his arms. Wrinkles on his back here. Ooh, I need my anatomy model for this thing. No, I don't. I got this. You got this, Mike. And then a little crease in here. Again, I don't want to stick anything together just yet because I can do that. I can have those overlapping later. And in fact, you know what? Let's go ahead and Control drag and let's go and hop on my custom menu here, and I go through and I could do my resolution in here. Just up that just a little bit, and we'll go ahead and refine just a tad. I'm going to go in here to inflate. Basically, the brushes I use all the time are the standard brush, the inflate brush, clay buildup, Damien standard, and move. Those are my staples. A little bit of trim dynamic and H polish depending on if I'm doing hard surface. My last live stream. Oh, if you want to catch up on my previous live streams, if you scroll down on my YouTube channel till you see the big blue genie, here's all the previous live streams I've done. So we talked a ton about hard surface on this Pizza Hut one for some reason. So everybody caught up? Everybody following along? Probably not, but let me see if I can. I'll get caught up on my messages here. I've been ignoring them for a while. Yep. 2x4 is interesting. Upgrade. You already have 2x3 Substance Painter and Quick. Yeah, definitely get 2x4. That's got all the ray tracing and texturing in there. Easy. Cool. Polymesh 3D, where it's only a start model. Now that I think about it. Yikes. Yeah, hope everybody's okay. Stay safe. Stay healthy. I want to get back into character modeling, 3D print figures, tall and minis. How much human anatomy knowledge would I need? Human anatomy is just fun to know. The more anatomy, and in fact, if you go in here and you just type in, we talk about it a bunch. So anatomy sketching a shoulder girdle, anatomy blockouts, anatomy sculpting. Any time I talk about anatomy, there's a bunch of that in there. So if you want to have fun with me and anatomy resources, there's a bunch in there. But yeah, just learn as much as you can. That's a lifelong endeavor. And it's also good for just it's also good for observation and proportion and any aspect of art, composition and shape and balance and all that stuff you can find on the human body. It'll pay off, I promise. But yeah, just like Arson Art says, it's a lifelong thing. I am doing amazing, thank you. Can you shed some light on the 3D mouse and 3D workflow? Is it useful? I don't see you using it. People swear by it. In fact, I mean, I have one and I use it occasionally when I need to navigate in any tricky situations. But while I'm just in here, just blocking out, I just use this. So I don't have it in my workflow right now. But if you watch the, what I brought up earlier, the video we talked about. Where I was actually making this guy with you know, 6 other people, I think 2 or 3 of them are using their 3D mouse. So they might have a little bit more insight into, you know, setting your hotkeys for your 3D mouse or utilizing your 3D mouse. I'm probably not the expert on that by any stretch. I guess this is okay. I'm just trying to go through here, and yeah, we don't need a ton of refining. You're basically just looking for the basic face here. I'm just going to kind of broaden this out just a bit. And I'm doing everything symmetrically, but we're going to break symmetry pretty fast because you don't want to have a perfectly symmetrical flower stack that's going to look a little bit drab pretty quickly. So again, we're just kind of getting his basic shape in here. So we have, again, this is just Dynamesh. The geometry is fine for just blocking out, but if you want to do anything specific or start again overlapping these shapes, what I would suggest doing, and you can save all your detail too. If you have we're going to knock this resolution now. We don't have a ton of detail on here, but if you did, you can always get that detail back. No big deal. So we're going to hold down Control and tap this point in history. You can see this is your history slider. You can go all the way back to where we started, and then all the way forward to where we are now. And any point along here, you Control tap to save those vert positions in memory. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go in here. Let's turn on our, maybe something you can see a little bit better. We're going to go in here to ZRemesher. I'm going to say adapt the size down quite a bit. Basically, this is going to build in any surface changes, any folds, or any direction changes on your forms. The lower you drop this, the more even your quads will be. It won't build in any extra quads around these shapes here. The higher it is, the more it'll build that in. So if you're doing chainmail, you probably want to drop this down to 0 or turn adapt off. But I'll keep it up just a tad. Target polygon count of 5 is fine. We have X symmetry on, so it'll be a symmetrical mesh. And it might be actually useful even at this part to go through here and split him down the side. So you can see in the reference, he's kind of just split down the sides here. So we can go from the side and just kind of mask here. Oops. Let's try that one more time. Try to be a little bit better. There we go. So we basically masked him here, and if you need to go clean up this mask, you can hold down Control and go in here to mask pin and be like, you know what, I want this to kind of come back a little bit, or maybe I masked too much in this area, so hold down Control Alt to unmask, Control, hold down Control to mask, and now we have his half of him masked. And what we're going to end up doing is we can ZRemesh so that there will be a polygon line. In fact, we'll put this right down the middle of his little flipper here. And we'll hold down Control Alt and tap to sharpen up that mask line, or you can go to sharpen your mask down here in the mask menu. So now, if I was to hit Control W right now, it would kind of put an alias line in here. I can try going in here to Edge Loop, Mask Border, and that'll like slice a line along that. It's still not great. You can go in here if you hit the comma key, go into brush. There's some light, so comma key opens and closes your light box. You might have a button up here for it. We can go in here to smooth, elemental PQRS, and in here is a smooth groups. And what that's doing is underneath brush, smooth brush modifiers, it's changing that weighted smooth mode to 6. So you can also hold down Shift and then just move this to 6, and that'll allow you just to smooth those border transitions. So if you needed very precise border smoothing, you can go through here and just kind of smooth that out. Or since we don't, we can also go in here and we can just say, because we don't want to lose our detail, if we were just to go in here to deformation, polish by feature, a feature being a crease or a polygroup border, and just crank that up, you're going to see we're going to start losing detail, but it'll smooth our border out. So let's make it so that if we go down here to masking and we say just mask, turn these other two off, mask our group's border, and then Control tap to invert that, or just hit inverse. And then now if we go up here to polish by features, and you can do open circle to really polish, and go through here and that'll smooth it out. Of course, let's do this. Let's do mask by features groups. Let's go in here to grow our mask, Control tap to invert that, and then we'll go in here, we're just going to tap polish by features with open circle. You're going to see it's smoothing that line out. And the reason I'm doing that is because when ZRemesh sees that line, it won't try to build in a bunch of chunky aliasing. It'll just keep it nice and smooth. So back to our ZRemesher here. And again, this is just, we're using ways to control our ZRemesh result. If you want more information to do that for like a face, okay, where you're gonna wanna go is the big blue genie, and then look for a Willem Dafoe looking leprechaun. And then right here we talk about how to basically make a face. So share, start at, copy. There you go. So you can get edge loops where you want them on a face with ZRemesher. Is it perfect for animation? No. Is it good enough for our purposes? Absolutely. So ZRemesher, let's see, depth size 11. We'll go ahead and we'll say keep group. Smooth groups down to 0. Our groups are already smooth. Then we hit ZRemesh, and this will give us new geometry here. Now again, if we want to, keep our details, we already have these points stored in history. We can control tap these because I think we have, control tap that point in history. Let's see, control drag, control tap that point in history. So here's our details, here's our smooth line, and then again, ZRemesher, that'll give us new geometry. And again, we might lose some details, but we can always go back in here to subtool, project, and then project history. That'll get our details back. And in fact, you can keep going lower. We can say half, ZRemesh this even lower, very, very low. However, we still want our details back. So again, we can say project history, control D to subdivide or hit that divide key, and then project history, control D to subdivide, project history, and there we go, we're getting our details back. You may need to go in here, you can go in, you can see it didn't project out far enough. You can go in here to project, projection distance, crank that distance up a little bit, or BH R, history recall brush, and you can literally use this, turn off X symmetry. You can use this to kind of project out or project back, and that'll save it. However, you're going to see we have a symmetrical mesh, but we've only fixed one side. No big deal. Turn off X symmetry, control drag over the side you want to keep, go down here to, because again, we don't want to mirror and weld or lose our subdivision history. So we like this one over here. That's just a simple smart resim across the x-axis. So there we go, X symmetry. Now, having done all that, I don't really need my initial subdivision to be this low. I mean, it's fine, but you can see it gets a little bit squirrely up here. You can rebuild this and project, it's not a huge deal. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna undo back to where we were originally before we started ZRemeshing. So here's our object here. So this one, I'm just gonna ZRemesh, again, target polygon count of, I don't know, maybe 4, keep groups. And this is probably good enough. I probably don't wanna, this is fine. I think this is fine to work with, good enough. So, and if you wanted to have a line cut across here, you can just go through here, Control Shift, and then it's like slice. That'll put a polygroup line here. We'll do a quick mirror, mirror and weld, and then when we ZRemesh with our groups turned on, it will put lines right where our polygroups are. Anyway, I think this is fine. We're gonna go through here and we're gonna say project, where was I at? Up here. Project history, Control D to subdivide, project history, and that's really all the information that I have available. And if I don't want this to hang out in memory, just Control tap the latest and then Control tap again to delete. So now we have a new object with subdivision history with polygroups here. So if I wanted to, go in and UV this as we start detailing this, it'll be a lot easier. And when we start posing and doing cloth simulation, having subdivision history is going to really help us out. Very useful. Kenny, thanks for being awake. Thanks for calling me a legend. Not a legend, though. Let's see here. Let me get caught up. Anatomy. Do you also skin and animate the characters you make? Skin, sometimes. Animate, no. I'm not much of an animator. Can you show us how Vitaly Bulgakov does his robotic cushion biceps muscles? I would assume it's, I don't know exactly But that brings up a good point. So if we go in here to stream here. So here's my Pixologic one. It's a really old, like way back at the beginning. We do a little bit of, these aren't really super labeled, are they? Where's my bodysuit? When we started doing the bodysuit, I think that's just a way to kind of do, boy, these are old. Let me see, part 3. Yeah, so we kind of blocked out our bodysuit here, and God, these are ancient now. We talk about some hard surface techniques. Boy, I was all over the place, wasn't I? Number 4. Somewhere in here, we start going through and dividing up like muscle fibers on her bodysuit. 5. Jeez. Okay, we're still. You might have to dig for it a little bit. I mean, it's not, and it's basically slice panel loops, and I can just do one real quick. But somewhere in here, you know, I'll just link you to this entire playlist. There's some interesting old. I have the same thing on my playlist here. I just don't have all the super old ones, and that includes her. So if we did want to say duplicate this off, and then we wanted to say, or if you want to do couch cushions, so Control Shift, let's go into solo mode on this. I'm going to say delete lower. I'm going to isolate this front part here, and again we're going to go through here and we're going to like slice some cushions into him, and then we'll do a quick mirror and weld. You can do panel loops from this as is. I like to do a quick like ZRemesh same keep groups just to kind of get some decent geometry going in these areas here, so it's not so nasty. And then then we can go in here to panel loops. So you can go through here and you can say geometry edge loop. So here's panel loops. That's going to look at all of these separate pieces. So if we do elevation at 0, it'll go front to back. So when we have the thickness here, when we hit panel loops, it'll give us panel loops. It has polish turned on. If you just turn that down to 0, that'll just kind of give you extrusion. And we have double turned on. So now these are individual plates, like plate armor. So Control Shift tap to isolate that polygroup, Control Shift A to visibility grow all. And now you have these individual panels here that you can go in here with like your move brush. You can go into auto masking, and you can say topological. You can just, you know, move these plates around. So now we have like plate armor sitting on top of our guy. However, if you have double turned off, it'll turn it into like couch cushions. So you can say turn double, and you can change all of this bevel profile. Again, just look up panel loops and you can check that out. So if we do panel loops with double off, that'll keep them stitched together. So you hold down Control Shift A, they're all stitched. So now we can go through here, and if you smooth this down, you're gonna see, maybe am I lying? Oh, we have mask by polygroups, topological, no. Let's turn that off. Double turned off. We should be able to smooth these down, and they should be able to stick to, oh, they are sticking together. It's just behaving oddly. If we hit D for dynamic subdivision, that'll kind of smooth them out. So now we have like, and you go through here, we can do like, let me turn on my pinch brush and go down here to, this is stuff we'll get into in a second, but elasticity. Oop, here, we'll crank that up. And then now when we go through here, we can start doing like cloth simulations. So now it's like he's covered in, you know, little, kind of like a couch cushion. Hit D for dynamic here, so you can go through here and you can sculpt on these individual panels here. Shift D to turn that off. But yeah, something that would be a way to block it out. Then you can inflate. I don't know. It'd just be a lot of Z modeler. You can also set up a brush for like muscle fibers and then start there. Cool. Oh, I might have missed the topology one. Sorry about that. Skin and animate. Hello from India. Thanks for making it. Let's see. Yeah, I do tend to talk about the same stuff over and over again. Let's go ahead and delete this out of our scene here. And we'll go back to our ZRemesh here. Snapping, quad draw. Yeah, so topology, I'll usually just go through here, and I have a brush set up for Z modeler topology, but usually I'll just use Z spheres. And if I need to do anything specific, Max Miyamoto, Blender, TopoGun, 3D Coat, they all have topology options that are just fine. So we're sculpting Oogie Boogie. Make an alpha out of a wire mesh. If you were to go through here, so here's our wireframe, and we go down here and we say, well, first we need to UVs. So, you know, we'll just do this the quick way. UV master, give me a second, Z plugin. We'll do it the right way. So we're gonna go in here to Z plugin, and then down here underneath UV master, we're gonna say, so here we have, let's say we have subdivision history, and we're going through, and we're, you know, we got, we're going through and we're sculpting. We have all this detail on here. We'll hit Control D to subdivide one more time, and we'll kind of put in those mouth lines. Oops. Like a burlap sack that's been kind of cinched with a line through it. And then again, we'll go through here and just add some wrinkles on here. So again, we got some detail going. We haven't added our stitches yet, but we have some details we definitely don't want to lose. And this is where the Damien Standard 02 can come in. Just make a really big brush size. You can see when you use this one, it'll kind of push the geometry away here. So to give you a really nice fold as you're going through. This is a really nice brush to use around the eyeballs. And again, we want to sell the idea that he's got some really, really baggy burlap kind of going through. So now, and again, we're not dynameshing anymore because we're not really stressing the geometry as we move it. So we're able to go through here and kind of really kind of fold and overlap. And like I said before, we can go hit W and control drag along here, and then, you know, really kind of, if you want, again, if you want this to be blurry, you can control tap, or you can just drop the resolution down. So as you drag, you're automatically getting a lot lower. So here, you know, so now these are touching, but they're never going to be stuck together because we're not going to dynamesh this result. So, and again, we have subdivision history here. So if we wanted to, you know, UV this, well, we don't want to UV, you know, 122,000. We don't have to. So we can go in here to UV master. We have symmetry, we have polygroups on. So we're able to go in here to work on clone. That'll clone this object off with just one subdivision level, and we can say unwrap, and that's going to look at our polygroups. And if we go in here to flatten, you're going to see here's the front, here's the back, and I went ahead and popped this little head off. Totally fine with me. You can unflatten. You can go in here and say enable control painting, and you can paint like where you want more density, texel density, or less. Same thing with ZRemesher, by the way. If you wanted more polygon complexity in the face, you can turn on ZRemesher somewhere in here. Use Polypaint, turn that on, and then color density. You can do 2x or 0.25x or anything, 0.5x, and then you can Polypaint with the colors it gives you, and it'll give you more or less geometry based on what you paint. Very useful. So once we're done with this, we can say copy UVs. We can go back to our object here with our subdivision history, and we can say paste UVs. Now, the whole reason we went into UVs is so we can go down here, subdivision level 1, wireframe. We can go down here to texture map here, and we can say create new from UV check, and now you have white where your UV lines are and then gray where they're not. So with this one, if we clone the texture off and we say texture, have this selected, we can go into, we don't want to adjust colors necessarily. Is there a transparent aliased? You can export this, and basically what I would do, oh, we can do a gradient. So let's just hit tap grad, no, black and white, clone. I'm trying to, in ZBrush, can I go in here and run like a levels? I guess we can hit adjust, and then for our gray area, we want to just drop that intensity down. There we go. So now we have white and black. which is kind of the opposite of what I want. No, that's right. So I'm going to hit OK, and then we're going to load that texture up here. And then if we go down here to, God, I'm trying to remember where it is. Oh, transparent. So turn on anti-alias, turn on transparent. So as I go through here, you have a transparent texture applied of your UV map. And in fact, if we BPR render, let's turn on our floor. I want to say, yeah, look at that. The shadow even takes into account. Let's take our light here to the front. Our shadow takes into account your UV and your transparency. So there's your UVs transparently rendered, etc., etc. Oh yeah, project history is awesome. It's actually better than, so what you used to have to do is, and you still can, underneath project, you can say project to all, so you'd have a subtool on or subtools on, and then the mesh you want to project, and then you can project all to all visible. But if you wanted to, you know, there's a Z project brush that you can project up and down to any visible subtools, but project history does both at the same time. So it's super useful. I almost exclusively use project history now. There we go. It's a little bit smoother. But let's go down here and we'll say anti-alias, transparency down, texture off, and material. So we'll definitely use those UVs to our advantage later. So keep that in your back pocket. But for now, we'll switch back to our startup material, turn off colorize. And so now we have UVs, and now we got our damn standard 02. We're going to go through here and just start. And this is where we can start breaking symmetry. So now if I wanted to pose him, you know, you hit W and control drag down, and you can start posing both sides. But if you want to break symmetry here, let's drop down. We don't need a ton of geometry to, you know, pose him. We'll turn off X symmetry and control drag. You know, you basically want to start from the hip here. And again, if we're using our Arnold reference, you know, we can be a little bit sillier than he's very serious. You know, just a slight contrapposto and hips and shoulders and very classic marble look. But we can go through here and let's say blur this. I'm gonna hold down Alt and then Shift and drag and then move this around. And then, you know, you want to kind of start posing from the hips, generally speaking. And again, we're just kind of positioning this. You can use transpose lines for this too. Just hit Y and you can just use a transpose line for bones. But we'll get a little squash over here on this side. And then let's tilt his head back. Control tap to blur a little bit. Again, hold down Alt to move this into place. And again, we can just kind of grab his arm. You can either mask his arm, or again, you can W control drag. And then as you control drag down the arm here, it'll kind of pick up your geometry. So whatever. And then control tap to blur, control tap the object to blur, or control Alt tap to sharpen. And then control tap in your document to invert, or if you're not quite there yet, again, it's all available under these masking buttons here. So we'll go ahead and kind of raise this arm up. So we got hips here, and we'll go ahead and take this leg here, minus butt, control tap, control tap. We'll go ahead and stick this leg out a little bit, and I'm going to turn on the floor so I can keep him kind of planted. You're going to see as I move this, the floor is also going to update here. So we'll kind of push this leg out a little bit here, and maybe, you know what, let's rotate here. And this might be a good example. If you hit Y to go into transpose mode, you can click and drag, and then it'll like put a little bone down the object, and then take these outer orange rings, and that'll kind of just put a bone in the object, and then you can hit rotate, and you can kind of take this bottom one here. So you can rotate down the axis. We'll kind of point that toe a little bit here. And then for this leg, we'll drag it in, and again, we got transpose on here, so W, just drag down the bone, and this one I don't even need to center the bone. I can just kind of scooch it in a little bit. You can hit W and scale it out a little bit. So transpose, It's fun. That's the original OG version of the move brush, the gizmo. So now we have this, and we're going to go through here, and I'm going to do some very rudimentary form correction here, because, you know, he's going to have traps, and he's going to have a shoulder here, and he's going to have a bicep here and a forearm, and it's very truncated, but I do want it to be vaguely correct here. And then this over here where he's bulging, and this is like a, you know, when you're starting out animating, you'll animate a flower sack, and he's a little bit, let's see. Let's also reset this here. This is reset. This is go to unmatched mesh center. So we'll kind of twist him a little bit. Now, as we're twisting, again, we can go, you know, we'll kind of twist him a little bit here. Remember, you can go in here to focal shift and crank that up, and that'll give you a little bit of bend in here. You can also go in here to BTC, which is brush transpose cloth. So now your gizmo will actually have cloth built in. So if we have that focal shift up, and as we're bending him, you're going to see he's going to start kind of getting a little bit of cloth going. Woo! So he's got cloth simulation, and that's all controlled underneath that dynamics. If you want the basics of this dynamics, I got a whole playlist for you. It is a monster playlist, but I'll walk you through it real quick. On my YouTube channel here, there's a ZBrush 2021, what's new, and then also on my ArtStation page, same thing, ZBrush 2020. Well, we have 2021, but like every point release, I have its own thing. If you go back to the original ZBrush 2021, what's new, you're gonna see there's 106 videos. ZBrush 2021 was a huge release. In here, you're gonna see the basics of dynamics, so dynamic cloth stuff. So check those out. To get a really deep dive into the cloth functionality, which is really cool. But you don't even have to use the focal shifts if you want to. You know, we have transpose cloth. You can go through here, and then again, as we were originally, you know, we have this mask and then inverted. As we're bending, it will go ahead and simulate cloth as well. So you can kind of get a little bit of that stretch, you know, kind of pulling across the object here. And then he's oh, you know what? Brush, auto masking, mask by features. It really seems to be, oh, duh. We have underneath brush, we still have smooth groups turned on. So that was basically, as we're smoothing, it really wants to keep our group nice. I don't want that anymore. So I'm gonna go back, let's also take this texture off. BS brush smooth, and we're just gonna go back to our original smooth brush here, which secretly I do have under the smooth brush modifiers for this brush, I do have weighted smooth mode set to 1. So if you want to change any defaults, so for my smooth brush, I change this weighted smooth mode to 1, hold down shift, brush, save as. And you need to be careful when you're doing this, but under ZBrush, Pixelogic ZBrush 2022, Z data, so brush presets, Control C, Control V, have a copy sitting out here because you don't want to have to reinstall ZBrush to get your defaults back. In here is your default brushes. You can just save over these. So I saved over the smooth brush in here so that every time I load up ZBrush, I have weighted smooth mode set to 1. That's smooth stronger for you in the know. There we go. So now we can smooth this out. So again, kind of squatch and stretch. We're gonna have a stretch on this side. You can make this nice and smooth, and then over here we can go in with our damn standard 02, and we can put in some real nice creasing over here where his burlap sack is just getting crunched here. And then now we can go in here and inflate and really start to kind of inflate this guy out. And as he's, and again, we don't need biceps in there, we just need little indications. And you know what, let's take this one and we'll kind of, let's do BTR to go back to regular transpose, and we'll take that focus shift back down to -100. And then I'm going to go in here to inflate here, inflate a little bicep, and then again, damn standard 02, which you have to find on the internet. I don't have a link for you, but it's out there. There we go. and give him some lats. So we're getting there. And I'm going to kind of, I'm just going through here and indicating where some nice wrinkles might end up. Again, on the squash side, probably some really fat wrinkles, and then even on the back side here, maybe some wrinkles here. And I'm going to hold down Shift and turn down my Z intensity, so when I'm smoothing on this low-res object, it's not overpowering. And then move, and there we go. So now we just need to kind of continue to refine, and luckily you can just hit Control D, but we already have subdivision history. So we're able to go through here and refine, and then go up to subdivision level 2 and continue to refine. What I like to do when I'm doing cloth typey stuff is go through here and just kind of put in the direction that I want my wrinkles to kind of go in. So here, his neck, and let's turn his head back. And again, we can drop down to subdivision level 1. And since we kind of rotated his body, we'll kind of turn his head back a little bit here. Control tap to smooth if you want to kind of ease that transition. Maybe even shrink his head down just a bit. There you go. And then subdivision level 2. And now we've got, we got some nice wrinkles over here. Now, as I'm going through and inflating, the inflate brush is literally just going to inflate these together. You can go in here to elasticity, and essentially, if we wanted to, we could say subdivision level 2, we could turn the floor on. This could all be simulated as cloth if we wanted to. So for instance, dynamics floor collision is on, gravity's turned on. We'll crank that down just a bit. And then as we run the simulation, he'll just collapse into the floor as cloth. And we can use that to our advantage. For instance, while we're doing this, we can actually inflate him. So as we run the simulation, now he'll inflate up like he's full of air. You can also go through here and you can say expand. So as he's, he's kind of all the normals. And again, this is in that ZBrush 2021 playlist. All the points are looking at each other and trying to expand away from each other, and also giving you a little bit of leeway to increase basically the relationships between these verts when you're going through here. For example, what's a good example? If we hit ZBrush Cloth, what's a good one? Cloth hook. So as I go through here with cloth hook, I can pull, and you're going to see it kind of stops because if you take a dishcloth and you pull it, it doesn't stretch. It's not rubber, but the relationships between these verts stay similar, and then it kind of pulls from other areas, and then it kind of turns into a wrinkle because that's how that algorithm's working to make it cloth-like. However, if you move it really fast, you're going to see then it turns into rubber because these simulation iterations, it's happening in real time. So if you crank this up, it will allow you to not really, even if you pull pretty fast, it'll still try to maintain those cloth dynamic relationships between the vert points. You can also change the firmness and stuff, we'll get to in a second. But essentially, that's what's happening under the hood. So with your dynamics here, and again, you can turn this on for any brush. So for example, if I go back up to subdivision level 3, and then I go into my pinch brush, and then again, this is just like my inflate, my pinch brush. Oops, we have that turned on already, don't we? This will be off by default. Simulation iterations at 0 in our last brush elasticity. So you can just pinch and pinch, and this is super useful to kind of go through and just kind of modify your geometry like so. You can just kind of pinch these closer together, or even when we get into this, putting a seam on here, you can go through and pinch those things. Oh, thank you. So that's super useful. However, you can also turn on simulation. You don't have to crank it all the way up. You can, do a little bit of both. And now when I pinch, you're going to see we're getting some cloth wrinkling. Now we do have expand turned on. So if I turn that off, now we don't have anything on except for cloth dynamics with elasticity, and then our firmness set to 2. So now when you go through here and pinch, you're going to see we're getting a little bit of wrinkling effect with our pinching. So I like to use this to kind of go through and enhance my wrinkles. And if it's wrinkling too, let's hit Control D one more time. So now we're in 488,000. So now if I go in here and pinch, you're going to see it's just going to pinch. It's going to say simulation skipped. Your mesh density is higher than the max. So if I go down here, you see max simulation is set to 250. I can crank that up, or I can go through here and I can hold down Control Shift, oops, and change that to select lasso. So as long as what's visible on your screen, your active points, is less than 250, now you can go through here and still have your simulation. Now, when I'm simulating, because I have so much geometry, 25,000 just in this little area here, you're going to see I'm getting very, very fine wrinkles. Well, you can go up here to firmness and crank that up so you get very, very not fine wrinkles, more of a leather, or you can simply drop your resolution. So there's not a ton of resolution on here to simulate, so it will automatically behave more like a general wrinkle. So that's how I would go through here and kind of, you know, drop down to sort of level 1 to get some very, very primary forms. And I'm basically enhancing what's already there. I'm kind of going through here and pinching some enhancing cloth around these areas here. And you know, there's also some cloth basics where it comes to, like, on one side you're going to have kind of a stretch, and then on the other side you might have a little bit of a compress here. Yeah, I guess it's okay. It's the same thing here. Here's the squash on this side and the stretch on this side. So you're going to have these things here, and also inflate here. So we just inflate the verts, or we can inflate with simulation iterations. And then now it'll maintain those relationships, so it'll inflate. And if you actually want it to inflate with dynamics, you can turn on inflate. You can crank this amount down. So while you're using dynamics, it'll automatically like inflate as well. So all of that. It also works with masking, you know, all that good stuff. So there we go. So now we've got some wrinkles going. And again, now that we have higher resolution, we're still under our overall count. So active points is set to 30 on this one, so we're still able to go through here. And again, we'll just kind of smooth his butt out, and then we'll wrinkle his back leg up a little bit, and over here on his lats, quote unquote, here. So there we go. We got a big old bodybuilder. And this is also, his head is still vaguely symmetrical, so I can kind of, you know, you can shrink this eye and open this eye up wide and give him a little bit more of a smile on one side, maybe like a smirk, just to kind of break that face up just a little bit here. You can maybe swing this to the left or to the right, so control drag over, control tap to make that a little bit softer transition, and then we'll say yeah, kind of just breaks that up just a little bit more. Interesting. Okay, so we'll drop down a step. We're on sort of level 2 still. And you can still, of course, go in here with your move brush and your smooth brush and all that good stuff. But for what it's worth, here. There we go. So now we can start talking about, and again, you don't have to use just cloth. If you see anything in here that's interesting that you want to go through, and let's tap L to turn on our lazy radius for our standard brush, so we can like go through here and we can start, you know, maybe bunching this side up, trying to see if there's anything that jumps out at me as something I'd want to go into their Damien standard 2 and maybe put in a little bit of a fat roll here, or I should say a canvas roll. So you still got plenty of leeway while you're going through here, and you want to just kind of make some cloth decisions of where your wrinkles are going to go, and your standard brush and your Damien standard brush and your clay brush, all this stuff. And then if you want to go through and kind of punch up what you've done, go to the subdivision level that makes the most sense. Go in here with your pinch brush, your inflate brush, your cloth hook brush, and just kind of enhance what you've done with a little bit of cloth love. Okay, and in fact we can turn inflate off. It's kind of nice for like an inflated bag like he is, but okay. So then level 3 here, and again, this is just kind of going through and refining however you'd like. But let's talk a little bit more about stitches, and then also surface noise. So this will be easy. So we already have UVs. If you don't believe me, we can go down here to our texture map and we can say new from UV map or UV check. And so here's our check, and in fact we can turn our polyframe off. There we go. So here's our UV map where our seams are. That's not great, but I think we can live with it. And then over here, I thought it was on the back, honestly, when I went through here. You can also, oh, here's a cool thing. So we can go through here and we can say, give me that surface noise here. And the default noise is like that rock noise. I want to use, I can go in here to noise plug, and I can say, give me a weave. And then now we can say mix basic noise down to 0. We can crank that strength up, and then the plugin scale, we can scale this down. Now you're gonna see UV is off, so it's a planar projection. So along the sides here, it kind of stretches. Just turn on UV, so it's gonna use your UVs and your UV seams. And then now you can see, you know, we get a little bit of a sack look going. If you go to pixellogic.com, let's just Google Pixellogic downloads. You can see the resource center. There's an alpha library, and in here I think there is some cloth, skin, stencils, textiles. So you can download these. So we're going to grab one of these. So we're going to go in here to noise, edit, and we don't want the noise plug anymore. We're going to turn that off. We're going to go in here to alpha, and we can just load up underneath your, if you download those. Where is it? There, that one. So you can just download these, and now you have, we can crank that strength up or down. We can say mix basic noise down to 0, and then instead of plugin scale, we have alpha scale. So we can turn this down, and now we can kind of get a burlap look going. Now this is going to be applied to our mesh. In fact, it's just a displacement. So if you go through here and you hold down Control, you can actually mask where you don't want it to happen or where you do want it to happen. But there's kind of a burlap sack texture. And also what we were going to talk about was what? Oh, you can also paint this. So if we go down here and we say UV map morph UV, it'll morph out here. So you can go through here. You can actually sculpt on this if you'd like. But you can also, let's go in here to texture import. I'm going to grab, let me see, Legacy ZBrush demo stuff 2020 fabric patterns. You can grab one of these things, throw it in the spotlight. And if you hold down Shift, you can do tile horizontally or vertically to get a little bit more tiling on here. You can back this out. I'm going to my standard brush, RGB turned on, Z-add off, and you can literally just paint. However, I forget about this too. You have to go in here to brush, samples, turn on spotlight projection. So you can sculpt and you can paint. Let's turn off lazy mouse here. Oops. You can sculpt and you can paint through spotlight. So we just kind of use this here. And then Shift Z to turn spotlight off. And then morph UV back. And there you go, although it looks like surface noise is blocking some of that. So let's go into surface noise edit, and we're going to say mix basic noise. I'm sorry, mix basic noise off, color blend down to 0. There we go. So now we've got kind of a sack look with this texture on there and all that good stuff. Now we still need to put stitches on them. So if we turn this off, you're going to see we luckily when we ZRemesh, we put a polygroup line right down the middle. It's going to come in handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate him off, and you know, let's do a quick save because we're going to start jumping. Whenever I jump out of an object, sometimes ZBrush can kind of get crashy. So let's go ahead and make a stitch real quick. And everybody cross their fingers. So, okay, Polymesh 3D. We have an object here. Remember, if we went down here to initialize on a Polymesh 3D object, this is the options we have. You just hit Q cube, W, scale this out. Go in here and we can say insert multiple edge loops, hold down Alt to delete that one, and then just drag this out to get some resolution. W, go in here to bend arc, and we'll just kind of bend this down. So we have a basic stitch here. And it's probably good enough. So if I hit Control W, make it all one polygroup, hit D to go into dynamic. It's kind of thick, so let's go to deformation. That's under your let's close some of these menus down. So while I'm, we don't need all of this information, right? And a lot of this stuff too, I have, I talk about it and I go over here, it's also in here. So here's my project stuff down here, and then ZRemeshers right here. So it's easy. Dynamic is right here. Deformation, so that's what we were talking about. So instead of opening the deformation menu, I have it right here in my custom menu, deformation and deflate. You can kind of deflate these down. If I want to, let's do Shift D. And we're gonna go in here, insert single edge loop. We can get rid of these just to kind of, and then hit D. So here's our stitch. Multiple ways you could have gone about that, but I don't know, for what it's worth, that's one way to do a stitch here. So now if I want to turn this into a brush, what I can do is if I want a brush that's going to repeat this way, I can turn it this way. Or if I want a brush that's going to repeat this way, I can turn it this way. And I'm just, for this, I'm control dragging and then letting go of control at a certain point, and then I can just keep dragging and it'll repeat out. So, or I can do both. So I can hit B, everybody cross your fingers. You know what, let's quick save. So B, create insert mesh new, yes. So now I have an insert mesh brush with stitches on it. However, I can also go in here to stroke, and then we can say curve. So I'm gonna hold down Shift and turn on all these curve things, and we're gonna say turn on curve mode. And then now when I drag out this stitch, it'll be placed along a curve. And of course you can use like curve step to kind of space these out a little bit more. And again, so that's just one insert mesh brush. If we turn it this way, we can say B, create insert mesh append. So now we skip. So now we have two options. So now this one with curve mode turned on, it'll space them, or it'll put them in that direction. Or we can say, you know what, give me a cross stitch. So we'll say 45, brush, create insert mesh append. We can say W, control drag out a copy, make this one negative, kind of overlap these a little bit, say B, create insert mesh append. Oops, sorry, hit Q, B, create insert mesh append. So now you have a bunch of different options we can choose from, and they'll all be put along a curve line because we have curve mode turned on. So if you like this brush here, you can go up here to brush, save, you can say select icon, that'll select whatever's on your desktop or your document here. Hit save as, and then you can throw these into your ZBrush. So this program files, pixel, ZBrush 2020-22, ZBrushes, ZAlpha, ZTools, all of that's where your lightbox looks. So going here to ZBrushes, I have an _ IMM, and we'll call this bunch of stitches. So now when we hit our comma key, if we ever want to pull these back in, we can go in here and we can say, where's my _ IMM? And then somewhere in here is a stitch bunch. There it is. So I can just double click that and I'll always have access to it. So anyway, now that we have that, we can go back to our object here and we can say, we're working on, this is a duplicate. So on this duplicate, all I really need this duplicate for is that path that is being provided to me by that polygroup. So we can go down here and we can say, you know what, let's go down to subdivision level 2. Let's go into solo mode. And also let's turn off. Okay, we don't need surface noise. We don't need a ton of resolution. In fact, subdivision level 1 might be plenty. We're going to say delete higher. So now again, we just have that polygroup path between those. So we can go in here to stroke, alpha dynamics, Z plugin, stroke, curve, curve functions, frame R, turn these other two options off, polygroup border. So I'll go ahead and frame it. Make sure X symmetry is turned off because you don't want to, that'll repeat your stroke. We're going to go in here to this first one here because if I look at these stitches, they're kind of generally just kind of placed along here, kind of a haphazard fashion. You can also use nanomesh for this, I suppose, if you wanted to. We kind of did this last stream where you can take nanomesh planes and kind of position them, stroke them out along here, and then use nanomesh, which you can like, I don't know, that might be, I'll show you another option. It's a little bit more brute force, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So we have this one, we're just going to tap to update, and then now we have these all kind of just dragged out along that. Now these are two things. Number one, they're kind of big, so I'm going to tap S to go into draw size, or just take your draw size down, and there you go. That's a little bit better sized, and they're too close together. So let's go in here to curve step, and we'll say like maybe 2.5. That's still too close. So maybe like 3.5, and I'm just 3.5. There you go. So now I have stitch along here. Now there's another thing too. They're kind of sitting on the surface. I want it embedded in the object. So let's undo that. Let's go down here to brush, depth. You can see there's a little circle indicator. If we just take this embed down and just drag this down, we'll put it to 0. And now they'll be generally, if you want to embed them a little bit more, just maybe like a -5. And then tap. There we go. So now they're nice and embedded in here. Dog's mad about something. So now it's still attached to the curve. So I can go through here and like move this curve around or all sorts of zany things. However, I want to get rid of that curve, so I can either just tap on my object away from the curve or go in here to curve functions delete. And then these are unmasked, so let's use that to our advantage. We're going to go in here to split, unmask points, and then now, you know, so here's our duplicate. If you want to keep this around for some reason, you can if you want to use this geo, but we'll just turn that off. So now we have our sculpt here, and we have our stitches here. Now our stitches kind of look blocky, right? That's because we had dynamic turned on when we made it. Just hit D to turn on dynamic, and then they'll be nice. And whenever you're doing a bunch of stuff, you want to make sure that it's not too heavy. You don't want to make like every one of these stitches like 40,000 polygons, because 40,000 times 110 is a lot of polygons. So here, our active points is only 5,000 for all of these stitches on here. And it also looked like we got a little bit jumbled with our polygroups in here. You see this is actually a separate polygroup. So Control-Shift-Tap, Control-Shift-Drag to invert that, and then Geometry Modify Topology Delete Hidden. So any of these you want to get rid of, you can. You can also move these individually. So you're going to see on the reference, like they're kind of haphazardly on there. And this is where a nanomesh would come in handy. If these were all planes with a stitch attached to each plane, you can go through there and use nanomesh to kind of jumble them up on the fly. However, this is a little bit more brute force, but we can go in here to Move Brush, turn on Auto Masking, and say Topological. There's a Move Topological brush too. If you hit BM, there is a Move Topological in here, but I just have my brush options open usually. Oh, coffee, keep me awake. So we're going to go through here and we can just, again, we can move based on topology. If you want to change that range down, I usually put it around 1.5. And then now it's only going to move the first thing you touch. So it's going to leave everything else alone. You could also do auto groups and then turn up mask by polygroups, but topological works fine. Another thing too to consider is some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, and they also are kind of, like I said, kind of turned this way. So again, you can go through here and just manually kind of go through there and do this. But like I said before, you can go through here, geometry menu, polygroups, auto groups, give them all a different polygroup, then hit W. Then you can control tap each one of these and it'll automatically mask by polygroups. You can go through here and you can move, scale, and rotate based on that. So pick your poison. And then again, this is redundant too. If you just want to go mask by polygroups with your move brush, it'll have the same effect. You know, so you can kind of go through here and kind of break this up. Now, let's go ahead and I'm going to turn off my surface noise real quick because I don't need to see that just while we're working. We also want to put a big old stitch down the middle of this, right? Let's turn mask by polygroups down to 0. So let's go over here to masking, not a stitch, a cloth seam. So we're going to go in here to masking and we're going to say mask by our group here, and then control tap to invert that, and I'm going to do a deformation deflate to kind of just pull all that in. So now we've got a nice seam line. However, you know, it's nice, it's okay, but let's say we want to kind of bulge out around the seam a little bit, kind of like a piece of burlap would be probably. So we're going to mask by features here, and then we're going to grow that mask so that it encompasses a little bit of this outside here, then Control Alt Tap to kind of sharpen it up just a tad, and then Control Tap to invert that. Now, if I go through here and now just inflate, you're going to see it's going to kind of get rid of that seam line. So let's go ahead with this the way it is. Let's go ahead and remask by our border here. And then if we go in here and just maybe do an inflate of like 1 a couple times, Again, it'll kind of give me that ridge line around the seam. So now when I go through here, and you know what? We can actually, I guess manual smoothing isn't terrible. We now have that seam line on here with a bit of that bulge built in. So now we've got a bit of that seam line here. And maybe I should have done this before I did my stitches, but I think we can work with it. Now that you know how to move your stitches around. Etc., etc. Oops. Looks like we got a little bit of a, oh, there is a weird polygroup in there that I should have cleaned up. I should have seen that. Oh well. Here, and I keep accidentally painting, so I'm gonna go on my standard brush and turn on Z-Add. There. So there we go. We got kind of a seam line, and you could have done all this manually as well. You could even, if you remember, we had our Morph UV is also still available that we can sculpt with. So if we go in here to, if it's a little bit easier for you, go down here to UV map, say Morph UV. You can sculpt on here. So if you wanted to go through and just like use your standard brush, or, you know, put in seams on here, or, you know, cut through here, if it's easier to do in this view, by all means, feel free. But now we have this and we have stitches. Now these stitches aren't really, they're not convincing me, because when you stitch something together, that's a really strong, like when you're doing cloth and there's something underneath that it's hanging from, and that's, you know, something's affecting the surface of that cloth, it needs to read like that. So let's go through here. If we hold down, if we just go in here with our standard brush, we'll turn on L for lazy radius, and maybe lazy radius is 7. If we try to sculpt through here, the geometry is going to block us. You can go in here to transparency ghost, and that'll make it so that it doesn't block us, but it's kind of hard to see a little bit maybe. So we're going to go in here to draw, preferences, draw, and in here there is transparent depth you can kind of play around with, and then also front opacity and then back opacity. So we're going to turn back opacity all the way down. Back, I don't know what that is. So basically just kind of play with these to get a little bit of a better look so you can see a little bit better. And then now we can make it look like, you know, as these things are pulling on the surface of that cloth, you're getting, and you could go through here and you can, you know, turn off lazy radius, and you can like go in here and just gotta punch in little holes. But even that's like a baseball. If this was a very hard surface underneath here, that's the result you would get, is maybe something like this. But in reality, on a soft-ish burlap sack, what you're more gonna get is, I think, a little bit more of this type of look, where it's kind of pulling along here. And again, you can work these into your, so we've already got the primary wrinkles on here, and then these are kind of secondary, tertiary-ish wrinkles on here. So you can go through here and you can kind of start, you know, and in between here where it's kind of, you're pulling cloth and then they're kind of cinching together along, like if it's looping through and you pull, it's going to kind of go, well, hell, let's look it up. Images. Like this, when you pull something across, see how it kind of, that's kind of the idea we're kind of going for. They're a little bit further apart, so we're not cinching together, but they are compressing in the same direction. I'm trying to see if there's a better example, and they don't really have loops. But you get the idea. So long story short, in between here where it's pulling, let's go ahead and turn lazy radius back on, lazy mouse back on, it'll kind of do this. Oh, and you can also use your cross stitch, or if you wanted to, since we have this, we can hold down Control Tap. If you wanted to like go through here and make this one across, you can. Or if you wanted to go through and be like, you know, these are way too close together, you can go through here and just Control Shift Tap, you know, maybe these ones, and say delete hidden, and then move brush to kind of, with topological. Oh, if your move topological draw size is 1, you can literally just move an entire object. So you don't have to worry about like that fall off or anything. So there we go, like so. And then again, we can go through here and kind of make our draw size big and just kind of stretch these out and elongate them. crisscross, make it a little bit more interesting. So here, and then along here, we'll alt tap through here. So now, yeah, this is an X cross through here, and then this one through here. And then now, and yeah, obviously be more careful when you're doing this and really think about art directing it and what really helps sell the surface as well as what doesn't destroy the overall look. I'm obviously not paying too close attention, so I may be making this much worse than it originally was, but and also how it can help tell the story of your primary folds here. So these are kind of secondary reads. But so if we go through here now and we use our standard brush, we can build this up. But remember, we have cloth available to us. So we'll go in here to inflate, and then on our inflate brush, we're going to say elasticity up. Doesn't have to be up all the way, but up. And then now we can go through here, and as we're inflating, it's going to respect our dynamics. And then let's also go through here. Oh, simulation skipped. It's actually not, but I'll show you how to fix that. So dynamics here, all this stuff I want off, I think. Firmness at 2, I think, is fine. And again, you can also use pinch. So the pinch brush, elasticity's up. So as we go through here and pinch, again, it's skipping the simulation because we have too many points here, but we can just isolate, Control-Shift, select lasso, isolate this area, and then we can say, pinch this. If these wrinkles are just too small, crank the firmness up, or just drop our resolution down so there's less of it to kind of mess with, and now you'll get, you know, kind of again those primary reads as it's pinching. And as long as these active points, 22,000 is less, we're in good shape. So you can go through here, and again, you can use pinching to kind of cloth it up just a bit, and then your inflate brush too to kind of go through here, and we'll inflate between, and then we'll deflate. Where our points are kind of pulling in there a little bit. So that'll give you, Control-Shift tap, that'll give you that, you know, that secondary kind of pulling cloth read. And again, if you need to, or if it makes sense, you can go through here with maybe your standard brush, and you can kind of marry, you know, some of this information here. And you can say inflate or pinch and kind of get, let's drop this resolution down a little bit. There we go. And maybe a little bit of move brush here. So now we've just basically taken this cloth and kind of made it work, you know, kind of feel that primary form here. And then this cloth is kind of pushing across here. I don't know that that makes a tremendous amount of sense. Again, you're going to have stretch on this side and compression on this side. So really, you'd probably want to play up less of this over here. These would be kind of straining against the little bugs he's filled with, which I don't think we'll have time to get to. But on this side, this is where the squash is happening. So we can go through here, and again, transparency, and we'll say, let's make that brush size a little smaller, maybe crank that intensity up just a bit. There we go. So we're really going to kind of play up that squash over here on this side. And you know what, before I do that, we set this up so we can go through here and we can say, you know what, you should be like this and you should be like this. And these, there's probably too many. So delete hidden, oops, delete hidden, move these things around a little bit. Again, he's a very haphazard type of character. I don't know if, again, I don't know how many of you have seen this movie. Hopefully all of you. There we go. So now, as we go through, and we say, you know, standard brush, transparency on, small. So again, these are going to kind of pull across here. We're getting that nice compression on this side and a little stretch on the other side, like so. And these will kind of maybe come together and kind of force something to happen in between here. And then in between these, go back to our inflate brush, you know. And again, our resolution's too high for the inflate brush to kick in with cloth simulation, but that's okay. Really what I'm looking for is, let's crank that intensity up a little bit, maybe turn on lazy radius. What I'm really looking for is just in between these stitches where the cloth is going to kind of bunch to kind of pop out a little bit. You can even go through and inflate down the seams if you want to kind of punch up that whole idea of the two pieces of fabric coming together. Anyway, through here, and then if we want to go through and do some dynamics, we can just isolate this part here. Again, go into our pinch brush maybe, and kind of sell the idea that these, and let's drop this resolution just a bit. These are really kind of pulling and creating some stressed kind of fabric along here. And then go up subdivision level, and yeah, maybe pinch a little bit along here. So now we're getting that kind of pinched look. As you can now go through here and you can kind of enhance. Let's see, lazy radius up just a bit. These folds through here. Maybe this one kind of goes and interacts with this fold here. And he's full of stuff. So that's kind of how you would go about doing the initial volume reads and then ZRemeshing, so you get nice, even predictable subdivision geometry that you can UV and then you can paint on, and then you can tile surface noise over here. And let's put that surface noise back on, but I'm going to dumb it down just a bit. If you wanted to apply this, you can say apply to mesh, and then you could 3D print this out. But if you want to do it in the, let's open up. This one. So this is basically, this is with burlap just applied in the texture. So if we go in here, we just have a material applied for burlap there. So you can kind of see, let's switch this out. What's a good environment? Put him on the beach. He's having a good time. So control, control shift right click. There we go. So now we got our little Oogie Boogie at the beach, and he's got the burlap fabric applied. This is just a fabric texture. So if we go out of here, you're going to see basically, this is just a tiling burlap. So we take linear, it's at 3.69 right now, but you can see this is just a burlap material that we just tiled down to kind of fit here. And then the stitches are all put on there. So, and that's what we did earlier when we were in here. Again, we rolled the dice, we animated it. We can turn on our V-Ray viewport here, and you can kind of see as the dice come in. Oh, we didn't talk about the dice at all. That's okay. There's the dice rolling in. There's the render. And then if we back this out, we can turn on our guy. And we'll go ahead and take this light. So this is basically that textured model. Oh, another thing we did too, if we zoom in here, you're going to see there's like lots of little fibers kind of poking out of them. That's easy enough to do, but here's the whole scene. So if we go back here, there's we can take these dice. It really wants to grab that background. So you can kind of frame this as there's a dice in the foreground, and put a little camera blur on there or something. Depth of field. So something like this. And then what we're going to talk about, we got the fabric, we got the dice, we got physics. Oh yeah, the fabric, the little things on here. So if we want to put like little itchy little cloths poking out of here, that's where we can go in here too. Yeah, you know what? Let's use this. So here's our original object here. You could use nanomesh with like little crinkly things out of it, but we can also use Fibermesh for this. So let's go in here to geometry. Not geometry. Tool, Fibermesh. So we're going to say, first thing we need to do is, this is important, go down here to display properties, make sure double's turned off so you don't do fibers on the inside and the outside. Then we're going to go in here to preview, and now we've got, boy, that looks awesome. We've got a hairy guy with just the default settings. Totally cool, but we're not really looking for that. I'm going to take this base and make it white, and the tip and make it white so we can see a little bit better here. And then we don't need that many fibers, so we're going to crank the max fibers down, and we also don't need them that long, so we're going to take this length way down. And also the gravity is kind of making them hang a little bit. They're not, and also twist will probably just turn off. Gravity, we're going to take to 0. That way they'll just kind of stick straight out from him. And you know what I like to do? You can, on render, if I zoom in here, you're going to see it's going to go from a flat plane to kind of a rounded, subdivided thing. I like to control that, so I'm going to take this profile up to 4 to make it a cylinder, basically, or a rectangular cylinder. Is that a thing? And then segments, I'm going to say segments of 4, just to kind of give me maybe 4 or 5, just to kind of give me a little bit more resolution down the object here. And then, you know what, that length, just a tiny bit less. There we go. So now we've got some itchy fibers hanging out of them. If we like these, we can go ahead and say accept, and then now we have these fibers. Now I did turn on fast preview. If you don't want to have fast preview, want to see exactly what's there, go down here to BPR, preview settings, turn off fast preview. But this is cool too. If you have a ton of fibers, you can have this on and have more or less. So as you're grooming, you have less to see, but we don't need this on. So here's our actual fibers on here. If you zoom in here, you're going to see they're just little guys hanging out. Inspect, when you hit BPR, this is what it's going to do. The tip and ISO, we can turn that down to 0. Subdiv, do subdiv of 1, I think. So now when I hit BPR, it'll render, it'll cast shadows, and now we've got little guys sticking out. So now, also we can go in here and groom these. So BG brush groom hair toss. If we want to just kind of comb this like fur, we can. Since they're so small, we may need to go in here to brush Fibermesh and say, that front collision tolerance, let's take that down to like 10 or something so we can lay it a little bit flatter. So now as I'm combing these and then hit BPR render, you're going to see they're going to kind of just comb in the surface, but that's not really what burlap does. You don't really comb burlap fabric stragglies. So we're going to go in here to brush BG brush groom and then turbulent. So we can go through here and we can just kind of crinkle them up. That's basically what I'm looking for. Just kind of crinkle, crinkle, crinkle. There we go. So now we've got crinkly little fibery guys along our object here. And oh, also, like if we did want to polypaint this real quick, sorry, not a whole lot of interaction happening today. I apologize. But we can go here to brown. Let's go ahead and change this to skin shader 4 so we can see a little bit better. We'll do like a dark-ish brown, and we'll say Control-Alt-F is my color fill object hotkey, and then for the stitches we'll go even darker here, and then back on our body here we can say standard brush, or BPA to go to your paintbrush, which is basically your standard brush. BPA, standard brush with RGB turned on. Then we can hit C to sample a color, and then we can make it a little bit brighter, a little more saturated. You can go through here and you can kind of like paint in, drop your RGB intensity down, maybe take your lazy radius. Yeah, that's probably fine. You can kind of go through here and kind of soften him up like so. And then if you want to darken his AO areas, because in here it does kind of look like he's been, he's got some kind of, he's a little painted on, he's got some heavy dirt areas. One way to do that is you can go through here and you can say Z plugin ambient occlusion, so we can compute this as a mask. And so if I go in here and say flat color, colorize off, you're going to see it just basically give us an ambient occlusion mask. And so you can hold down Control Alt and tighten this mask up if you want to, or soften it, whatever you want to do. Control Tab to invert, and then now we can go through here again, C to sample a color, make it a little bit darker in those areas. Control Alt F to fill, Control drag, and now actually a little darker. There we go. So now in the ambient occlusion areas, it'll be a little bit darker. And we'll see to sample, and again, make this a little bit lighter, maybe a little less saturated actually. And then I never use the paintbrush. It's just one more brush for me to have to worry about. So I'll basically just turn RGB on for my standard brush here. So we can kind of go through here, kind of lighten up some of these areas through here. And again, you could even mask by your ambient occlusion. There is a mask under your mask options. There's a mask by AO. It's not quite as nice as the ambient occlusion plugin I just used, but it's useful in some instances. So again, go through here and we'll just kind of color him up. And then we'll go in here really dark and we'll kind of pop his facial features. So we're going to say his eyes, nice and dark through here, and his mouth through here. I'm going to do overall adjustments. I can easily go in here to our Polypaint. Here, we can say adjust colors, and I can literally go in here to, I can change, you know, I can hue shift him, but I can say, you know what, maybe desaturate him a bit, and then maybe increase that intensity here. Overall, you can even tint him with another color. We'll hit OK. There we go. So now we've got our floor turned on. We got our lights positioned. We can hit BPR. And if we did want to throw this over into Keyshot, we certainly could. If you have the bridge, you can say render, external renderer, Keyshot, and then we hit BPR. That'll send all this over, including my surface noise. And then, oh, excuse me, it's standing up too long. Wait for it. And there we go. So edit, preferences, save. Let's move this so you can see it. There we are. And usually what I'll do is I'll hop in here to the material graph and I need to make some adjustments. So this is the stuff that gets imported. It's a legacy, upgrade to new node. Take this, delete hidden. If I don't want the matte cap applied, I can just take that off, and now it's just the vertex color information. In fact, I can set this to, you know, it's on advanced right now. I can set this to whatever, let's say plastic. And then we can change the roughness to be whatever value we want. Diffuse specular, plastic, surface. You know what always helps? Going in here to your environment, and we'll put him in an environment here. God, I always forget control on this one. And let's go in here to environment, and we'll just take this, just have a black background color here. There we go. So now we've got our little straggler little guys here, and our environment map giving us some shadows and our stitches and all that good stuff kind of dialed in. So that's one way to go about it. Of course, you can go into Substance Painter, Quixel. Here's some fabric. You know, you can also throw it into Maya. You know, use Arnold or V-Ray or Redshift or Octane, whatever you want to use. And there you go, everybody. Happy ZBrushing. Now let me get caught up because I haven't looked over here in a while. Yes, in fact, one thing you could do, instead of baking it out like I did here, you could actually tile that cloth noise, that black and white texture as a bump map, and then just tile it in here, in the material there. That's another way to do it, as opposed to baking it into your model 0 to 1, just have it tile. Thank you, Dark and Graham, for hanging out with us. Can we also save these cloth animation? Or is they're not intended for that? You can. So if we go in here, let's go ahead and get out of Keyshot here. Back in ZBrush. So we go out of edit mode. You know what? Let's do a quick save. Wait for it. And we have a sphere. Make Polymesh 3D. And make it a white color. And we have append. Now, if you have a Polymesh 3D and you append a primitive to it, it'll automatically make it a Polymesh 3D, so you don't have to do that again. And then we can go up here and we can say, scale this up here, and let's hit Control D to subdivide this. Then let's go down here to our dynamics, and you can say run simulation will have gravity turned on and our floor collision turned on. So when I run the simulation, it's going to collision volume. There you go. So anything that's not the object will be stored as a collision volume. So that'll go ahead and look like it's animating this cloth. Again, you can also go in here to BTC, Transpose Cloth, and then manually you can pull this down. And as you're transposing, it'll go through. And in fact, you can scale it this way or scale it this way. So again, as you're moving, it's just running the cloth simulation. That's kind of cool. There you go. But you can also store this in animation. I don't really remember how it's done. Let me see underneath the layers, timeline. So movie, timeline, show. I want to say import, record, deformation, animation. Tap in here, record, run. Stop, play. Ugh, I don't remember how to do it. But what I'll usually do is I'll be like, hey, something in ZBrush I don't remember how to do. Let's see if we can just find it. Dynamic simulation menu, wrinkle in any object, animation cache, record, playback. Have that exact. So here's a cool guy named Mike walking you through how to export, import, record this. You can actually play back in your timeline. So there's that. Now getting it out of there is a little bit of a different story. It's a very dated let me see. See if I can find. ZBrush Cloth Dynamics to Maya. There we go. So in Steve's, he is basically like importing and exporting, converting an MDD file exported from ZBrush to an Alembic cache that can be read into Maya is all right here. So I'll link you to this. So from ZBrush to Alembic is there. Let's see. Cool. And I might have missed some stuff. I apologize. There's a lot here. Yes, ZBrush is powerful. Yeah, and if you're new to ZBrush, don't take my live streams as like, here's intro to ZBrush for, beginners. I'm here to have fun. I'm not here to teach you the intro to ZBrush. Like I said before, I've got 5, 6, 7 intro to ZBrush courses that you can take for free on the internet. So start there and then come back and you can do transparency in ZBrush. It's a little bit weird. It's not like, Keyshot transparency where literally I can, oh no, did I close it? Let's go here. Or V-Ray transparency. So if we go in here and again, we'll throw this over to Keyshot, but while we're waiting for this, for example, these dice, okay. Yep. Edit. Come on, you got it. Edit. Preferences. Save. Environment. I like the bathroom. Color. For instance. Let's crank this brightness. There you go. So if I go in here, let's say beer, and drag this on, and we go in here to lighting, at least put it on a product, and then back in our material, we can say that transparency distance may be 0.1. There we go. So we have a beer material on our object here. Let's go into scene and let's go into these stragglers. We can probably turn off here. So very easy to do transparent. And in fact, if I'm like a really transparent, I'd say 1. Now we can see pretty much through this. If we want to do caustics, we can say, put this on jewelry. And now you're going to see, really nice transparent liquid rendering type thing. However, let's go back to our material. Again, we'll say 0.1. And this is another cool one too. So you can see we have this node here. Let's go into the material graph. There's a bubbles density on here. So let's say, up here you can click it and it'll say executed geometry nodes. I'm trying to see if we can see the bubbles in here. Let's say 0.25. And the bubbles here, density up. You can actually, it'll render bubbles inside of your beer. Let me see size. Execute. And I bring, ZBrush scale isn't exactly, let's say 0.1, I don't know. Oh boy, that's big. 0.01. Okay, good. And then density down. So now we're getting, size variation and density can go way down maybe. There we go. So now we've got some bubbles floating through our beer guy. The other cool thing too is we can, you have this little input down here, so we can make a utility on here, I think, which would be gradient. So texture color gradient. We'll put this right in here, and this will dictate if we hold down, was it Control? No, just double click. L, M, N. Oh, I forget. We can just go up here. We can say pre-add material work, add animation, preview. Where's my preview? I just don't remember the damn hotkey for it. Oh, this is where when I'm doing a video, I can just edit out how stupid I am. And that's really useful when you're live streaming. It's just all out there. Duplicate, delete, preview, color. Thank you. So here's our gradient, goes from black to white. So we want to kind of concentrate those bubbles into one area. We certainly can do that. So now we need to go through here and we need to move the texture. And I think let's just rotate it. So all my bubbles will kind of stay at the top here. Let's keep this flat. So, okay, we'll say check, please. And then we'll go out of the, what's hotkey for this? Does it tell me? Preview color, damn. And then we re-execute the geometry node. And then now you're going to see the bubbles just kind of stay at the top here. But actually, that wasn't even over here, was I? So we're going to crank that density up, maybe crank that size down. Size variation is fine. Re-execute. Density up a little bit more. Refresh. You can also just refresh this here. Let's say 60. I don't know why I'm feeling the need. That's 0.00. Oops. To really fine tune my beer look, but this is just fun. So anyway, that's one way to do transparency. And let's switch over. This is fine. Let this res in with our bubbles. So one way to do it. And then we'll go ahead and pause this. And then, same thing in here. We can just select this, this material. And then for this material, we can take our refraction color and just, let's turn on. Oh, come on. Oh my God. Stop being like that. You and you. Okay, so for this material, or we can take this dice here, this dice material, and again, that refraction color. We can just make these basically transparent and do all sorts of zany stuff that you want to do. Now we have ice cubes. But again, we'll go back in here and we'll say V-Ray material, refraction color back down. In ZBrush, you can go in here and if you wanted this to be transparent, this object, you got to go in a subtool by subtool basis, go down here to display properties, BPR settings, BPR transparent shading, say always yes, and then you render this out. Oops, I'm sorry. Yep, we want to keep that paused. now when you render, it'll be transparent. And there's all sorts of like underneath rendering, you can go in here to transparency and you can change all these to kind of get the look you're going for. Cool. Fuzz on the brow, better keep that in the modeling tools. ZBrush, would Keyshot fuzz be visible? Yeah, you know, now that you mention it, there is, yes, you can use fuzz in here. There's even like carpet fibers here. So if you wanted to go in here and say, is it carpet? What is it? It's plastic towel, plastic blue fuzz. And then we'll execute this geometry nodes here. Now he's a Muppet. How cool is that? Let's move this light around. Environment, let's take that contrast up too. Suede towel. Let's do towel. Get some big old fibers on there. What does this mean? Scene has warnings. Oh no. You know what? Dark gray. I like the fuzz. Oh, now they don't want to render at all. Well, you guys saw. Rewind 5 seconds. Yep. I'm doing a 2080 Ti right now. Workstation stuff. Let's see. You want all my specs? It's the second one here. Check that out. And then in the description here, there's some more. Alrighty, Keyshot render with GPU. What is GPU? Yeah, GPU. It's really super difficult to do. All you got to do is hit a button. So let's go back to where we had something that wasn't fuzz. Here, and then just hit that button. Control Shift Q for Polygroups not working. Possible to change anything. There we go. So that's the GPU turned on. In this instance, because we're throwing a lot of, especially if you turn on caustics and stuff, there's a lot of calculation going on here, so it's not going to be tremendously faster. In fact, I wonder if it's hybrid. Let's see. Yeah, so you can see it's not using my CPU, but my GPU is getting kicked in. If we turn the GPU off, that's where the CPU kicks in. And I think I have it 100%. So there's my CPU, and then we got this render going. Control Shift Q is not working. Possible to change anything. Yes. GPU 2020 2080 Ti with a Threadripper 3970X 32 core processor. As far as the Control Shift Q, what is that? Polygroups. Let me just turn this off, sorry. Group visible, group control W I know of. There's visibility, grow polygroups, that's right. So for instance, if you go in here to solo mode, you grab a little piece of this object and say Control Shift A, that's visibility, grow all. If you do grow to polygroups, it's Control Shift Q. So you should be able to grab a little piece of this and Control Shift Q to grow to just a polygroup. So it works on my machine. Cool. Do you think 2060 Super is okay for Keyshot? Keyshot, sure. If it works, it works. Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks. We've already streamed on my channel, but if I stream again this month, it'll be here on this, on my Twitch channel or on my YouTube channel here. And then if you need all those links we were sending out earlier, sometimes it's a little bit easier to find on my ArtStation page. They're a little bit more granular. So if it's like, I want to know what ZBrush 2021.6 had, that would be these videos here. And then this up here in the upper right will start you right at the new 21.6, as opposed to those giant YouTube playlists. So cool. Yeah, grow visibility, polygroups. So cool. Thanks everybody. And catch y'all on the flip side.